Hi, in this lecture we'll be discussing a brief history of cognac from Roman times to the current day. By understanding how cognac developed, we can better understand what and why things are the way they are today. Let's go. From Roman times, the area around Cognac and Bordeaux were active trading centers, with Cognac being just north of Bordeaux and easily accessed by the Charente River. Now, the vineyards of Poitou were a very fertile area for not only grapes and farming, but for salt production as well. Now we fast forward to the Middle Ages, and these vineyards and their wine were appreciated by the Baltic and North Sea-based trading ships where wine production itself wasn't feasible. Vineyards continued to spread and expand despite that the cool, wet climate made for tricky ripening, and their resulting low alcohol wines didn't travel all that well. Now, the Dutch had already picked up distillation technology in trading with the Moors down in Spain. And in the 1500s, they were playing with distilling grains back home and flavoring them with juniper because, well, they tasted nasty, and juniper masked some of the rough edges. The wines they had found in France didn't take well to ship travel, so they started distilling the wines to make them more stable and reduce the volume taken up on ships. While the French and English squabbled and skirmished, the Dutch in these days were the European trading elite with immense wealth and a substantial and thirsty upper class. They were already distilling these wines in Amsterdam, so why not do it at the source? Now, the Dutch had been working with copper for a couple of thousand years already, and soon set up stills in and around Poitou to distill the wines. These cooked wines, or burnt wines, which in Dutch were Brandwein, eventually gave us the name brandy. These brandies were drunk with water, and the distillation was only a single run, remember, and this drink was called brouillis. This is the same word still used for the product of a single pot distillation, or low wines, here in Cognac. In the early 1600s, double distillation begins to be used, which further concentrates and stabilizes the Brandwein. The French were already very involved in improving and modifying the Dutch stills, and many still technological advances came from the French as the brandy from here was increasingly sought after. A double distillation enabled it to travel even more concentrated and stable compared to the Brandwein. The Dutch, who were known for their ability to reclaim swampy land, eventually finished their contract to do that in this area with a couple of the King Henrys, and when the French government started taxing them for their brandy production here, they moved on. Many went to Armagnac to get involved with the same distillation activities there. A fun story regarding double distillation is that the idea came from Chevalier de la Pomerone, Lord of Sagonzac, a very religious man who dreamt that the devil was after his soul. In his dream, he was thrown into Satan's cauldron, but he was so pious that the Lord protected him during this first cooking. Satan ended up having to cook him twice in his dream, or double cook him. This dream led him to emulate the devil and extract the soul of the base wine through two or in a double distillation. The increasing demand for these brandies resulted in increasing production and them being stockpiled in the ports stored in the local Limousine oak barrels, which led to the discovery that they noticeably improved during this time. So much so that you could finally just drink them straight. Now, by 1643, we have the first Cognac House of Aussier. As we get later into the 1600s and on into the 1700s, trade really expanded and the international trade really took off. The English very much enjoyed cognac, and many merchants set up shop in the region and collected eau de vie or unaged distilled brandy from the locals, or made their own and then aged them before sending them off to Northern Europe. Our Martel comes about in 1715, Remy Martin in 1724, Hennessy in 1765, Otard in 1795. Now, the party ran out of steam in the late 1700s, with 1789 seeing the beginning of a number of revolutions and instability, with alternating protectionist and laissez-faire attitudes lasting on and off for the next 60 years. France's most famous general, Napoleon, took cognac with him everywhere, even into eventual exile, or at least his first exile anyway. The removal of the rich aristocracy's heads in the French Revolution meant those heads were no longer able to consume cognac. Though by the time Napoleon controlled most of Europe, cognac exports recovered until his continental blockade, meant to hurt the British, saw a market collapse in France around 1808. This Napoleon was in and out of power a couple times before finally out in 1815, and some stability eventually returned. Now, Europe has a long tradition of mortal enemies becoming drinking or trading buddies before becoming enemies once again. But here in the 1800s, we see trade now expanding into the Americas and even the Far East. We have Aussier in 1843, Royer in 1853, Hardy and Camus in 1863. Production volumes had increased tenfold during the 1800s, especially after the third Napoleon went 180 degrees away from shunning England and signed a free trade agreement with them in 1860. Now, the technology had also developed by this time to allow cognac houses to ship in bottles, complete with labels to show off and promote their brands. We now see cognac close to the way it remains to this day, renowned around the world and much in demand by those with power and money. Then Armageddon arrived in the form of a little winged aphid called Phylloxera. European scientists, eager to study new, more hardy grape species from the New World, had begun their rudimentary crossbreeding and, in true science fiction form, unleashed a monster. Phylloxera was still a threat to American Lambrusca vines, who had at least developed some defenses to it over millennia, but the Vitis vinifera of Europe was defenseless. A remarkable multi-stage life cycle that still challenges growers decimated up to 90% of European vines. Around 1875, Phylloxera appeared in the Cognac region, and by 1895, plantings were down to 40,000 odd hectares from 280,000 in the 1870s. Now, the only silver lining was the creation of committees where working together rather than solely competing saw the 1888 Viticultural Committee, then called the Station Viticole, in 1892. While Lambrusca, the main wine grape of North America, was still pretty vulnerable, Vitis aestivalis, Rupestri, and Riparia were more resistant. The natural first step was to cross these with vinifera, but these subsequent wines never managed to lose the musty, gamey, or what is often called foxy character. These would not work for cognac. But with Phylloxera's greatest damage being to the root structures, grafting vinifera onto aestivalis did the trick, but not for years. Their first attempts were catastrophic. The first rootstocks brought over could not withstand the chalky soil of the region. New rootstocks resistant to chlorosis had to be found. It took many years of hard work and patience for the economy of the region to recover. The previous dominant varieties of Colombard and Fol Blanche didn't handle grafting as well as the lesser used Uni Blanc, which explains why it now accounts for more than 98% of cognac production. These new committees, established to deal with the disaster, morphed into trading co-ops and ushered in the establishment of a delimited region for cognac in 1909, and the appellation d'origine contrôlée in 1936, and then the sub-regions were delimited in 1938. World War II arrives, and the Wine and Eau de Vie Distribution Bureau is created to try and protect the stocks held in the region. And after the war, the Bureau Interprofessionnel du Cognac forms as a merging of the other professional organizations. Still very active today at all stages of cognac production, they have established regulations ensuring quality, consistency, as well as the promotion and even the survival of cognac. As has been the case, cognac was born as an international luxury product and has only become even more so, with 97% exported out of the region to 150 or more countries. Creative marketing into diverse cultural and age demographics has allowed several cognacs, especially Hennessy, to escape being pigeonholed as the drink of old white guys in smoky drawing rooms. In fact, the future looks quite bright for a spirit that's been around for centuries now. Hopefully this lecture has helped you better understand the history of this remarkable French spirit. See you next time.